Hello folks, and welcome to my workshop. My name's Dave, and today we're going to be making a hollow spiral candlestick. Well, it's somewhat like this. Before we get started, let me show you a little bit about the candlestick that we're making. This is a practice blank that I made that has the twist in it, just like I want to make it. But you can see that the twist consists of two parallel helixes. There's one start here, and one start here. And unlike this practice blank, we're going to flare the real one out a little bit and give it a little bit more curvature up there. We're making this out of dark walnut. I already glued up some blanks. The first thing I'm going to do with these blanks is square them off and then cut them to length. Okay, now that I've cut my stock to length and squared it up, on the ends anyway, I'm going to put my plates on it. These plates mount into my ornamental milling machine. It's a legacy ornamental milling machine. They don't make them anymore. They stopped making them in 2012. So I didn't really worry too much about scraping up my glue or getting perfectly sized stock when I glue these blanks up, because I knew I was just going to round them off to 1.5 inch diameter. And I'm just going to eyeball the center of this with this, because my tooth plates are just about the same square as my stock. And I'm going to hold it tight so that I get all 4 screws in the right place. Now before I put that on, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to use the plate on this side also to find the center. And the same bit, just going to touch it with the bit though. And then I'm going to use a scratch awl to go ahead and make that hole a little bigger. And this will fit into the dead center opposite the drive stock. And then I can go ahead and screw that on there. I could have probably got away with 2 screws, but I have security issues, and I really don't want this thing flying off at me when the router comes down and starts shaving it round. Okay, so I'm here at the mill, and you can see how this toothed plate fits into this other female plate. Ooh, only fits up, there it goes, and it locks in like that. Then the tailstock needs to come over and hold it in. Okay, so the first bit we're going to use is the bottom cleaning bit. You can see it's just got a flat bottom and side cutters. And if you've never seen this little trick before, I've got a Porter cable router, but I've got the quick release chuck on it, so I can just screw an Allen screw, put the bits in and out. So you can see I can turn this lead screw, move the router over, and I can move the router forward and back. And now I'll plug the router in, and I'm going to go get earmuffs because it's loud. Okay, so here we go. Going to start milling the first one. Okay, now I'm going to use a dial caliper to check where I'm at. A little over 1 5/8 inches, so I'm going to come down about a 1/16 of an inch, slightly more, and I'm going to clean this block up one more time. Go with the dial caliper again to see where I'm at. It's much rounder now. Look at that, right at 1.5 inches, so that is right where I want to be. Rather than continue, I'm going to leave the setup the way it is. I'm going to remove this blank, and I'm going to mill the other 4. Okay folks, now we're at the fun part. I have planed all of my blanks down to 1.5 inches diameter, and now I'm going to take out my planing bit, 1.25 inch bottoming bit. The router is unplugged, and I'm going to get out. This is a 1.5 inch diameter rope molding bit. And you can see it's got sort of a rounded profile on the bottom, and then it sort of wings out into a full 1.5 inch diameter. Okay, now that I have the depth of the router bit set, to just take a shaving off smaller than the 1.5 inch diameter, I've already made it round. With the tip is right at the end of my stock, and I know that I want to start the helix an inch and a half from the end, and I will lock it to my lead screw so that it doesn't go anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut at each end of my helix. This end I'm going to bring the router in until I hit the center point, and then I'm going to move it around. Okay, so here goes the cut. Oh, gotta plug it in. Okay, so I've made the cut at the tailstock end. Now I need to make that same cut up by the headstock end to move it closer by the length of my helix. And I have right here my practice piece, and from here to here is a pitch and a half, and I'm using 3-inch pitch, so that's 4.5 inches. And this will be the other side of my helix. Okay, so you can see that so far I have essentially made a Tootsie Roll. At each end I have cut with my rope molding bit, and I spun it around. So now I'm going to do the helix from tailstock side toward drive stock side. You always want to cut towards the drive stock side so that you have more material thickness as you're cutting along. I'm going to set up my gear ratio for 3-inch pitch. That's this little gear here. I've got a stop set at each end, so the same location that I came across to do this cut, I've got a stop set, and also at the headstock end. So what I'm going to do is cut this towards the headstock, then I'm going to move the whole carriage over half of the pitch because I want 2 starts. I want 2 parallel helixes, so I need them out of phase by exactly half the pitch. And then I'm going to cut towards the headstock again on the second cut. I had the gear ratio upon checking the gears I was using. It was set up for 6-inch pitch, not 3-inch pitch. This is the gear for 6-inch pitch. This is the gear for 3-inch pitch. Yeah, I probably should have seen that, but I actually think I can save this candlestick. It's just going to look a little different because I moved the carriage over by 1.5 inches, which is half of the 3-inch pitch, and since I happen to use a 6-inch pitch, it's also divisible by 1.5 inches. The difference is that instead of 2 parallel helixes, I need to do this 2 more times to end up with 4 parallel helixes. So you're going to see me repeat the same procedure here to make this mistake candlestick into something useful. It should look fine. That's a nice thing about this ornamental work, is it's sort of up to you interpretation on what's beautiful. Okay, this is blank number 2, and now we're going to see what should happen. This time, it looks proper. Now for comparison, these last 2 I'm going to mill with the helix going the other direction. So if instead of right-hand threads, this is going to be left-hand threads. Well folks, yet another disaster. The gear train, when I cut the ends, a piece of wood chip flew into my gear train. So I engaged the gear train. I thought it engaged, didn't engage. It just ran a straight cutter across there. So this candlestick probably can't be saved, and it's a shame because I love walnut. Okay, again, we're going to try to cut a left-handed helix, and we're going to try with a fresh blank. This is the last blank I have, so hopefully it works. Aha! I had success. Hey, 3 out of 5 ain't bad, right? So now comes the part where I make the spiral hollow. I have put in a 3/8 inch upcut spiral straight cutter, and I've set the plunge depth on my router to come down to the center of the blank. Instead of starting here, I moved it over 3/4 of an inch to set my stop, and on this edge I also set the stop at 3/4 of an inch away from there. There you have it, folks. Hollow spiral. Okay, folks, after reevaluating that piece that I did the 6-inch pitch on, I decided to go ahead and try a hollow spiral on it. Nothing to lose, right? How about that? That is really a thin hollow spiral. So now I'm going to come down and make a 1-inch tenon so that they can fit into the base. I've already set my plunge depth, so here we go. Okay, lastly, I'm going to put a little flare out at the end of the candlestick. I moved the router back 3/16 and I plunged down 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to switch out this core box bit for a little round over. Okay, so now I've set up with that round over bit. I'm just going to plunge down and rotate it to put a little bit of a fillet on instead of having a sharp corner there. And there you go. Now the end of it is flared out. Okay, now I'm back at the bench with my candlesticks. What I really I'm after for the tip of them, I want to flare out like I did on this blank that I ruined as my practice piece for rounding this over, and I just did this with 80 grit sandpaper all the way around, just smooth out some of these rough edges. You can see though I have a line going all the way around, and it's quite difficult to sand that out. I went a little bit too deep when I did the round over bit. So on these other candlesticks I left it a little higher, and you can see I actually left a bit of a shelf because I figured that would be a little bit easier to sand down. This candlestick has a little bit of a deeper ledge to sand off, a little more than I care to do with hand sandpaper, so I'm going to go ahead and try and use the rotary tool to clean this one up. See how well this works. Okay, that worked pretty well. My only minor problem with that is you can see that right at this spot here I had a blip where the rotary tool grabbed and took off, and it made a little bit of a blip there, but it's nothing I can't sand out. So I'll finish this one up sanding it by hand. So I've cleaned up the candlestick just with some hand sandpaper. I got rid of that shelf, I got rid of the line, but I still have grit marks that go around because I was spinning it when I was sanding it. So now I'm going to clean all this up at the sanding mop on my drill press. It's very important when you're using a sanding mop that you run your drill press at full speed so that these sanding strips can fly out by centrifugal force. So here we go. That pretty much takes care of all those little sandpaper marks that were going radially to the grain. Looks much better now. I wish I could say it didn't take much, but that's rarely the case in sanding. That took a little longer than I was hoping it would. 5 candlesticks. Well, here I go. Okay, so now I've got these candlesticks all shaped up on the end to give it a nice little bell shape. And I'm happy with how the sanding came out, so I'm sure I'm not going to put it back on my milling machine. I'm going to go ahead and remove these steel plates. I did cut into the screws a little bit with my router bit, so these screws will not be reused. That's okay, those screws are cheap, right? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and drill the top hole on these candlesticks so that they can actually hold a candle. And I just got a Forstner bit set up on my cordless drill. I thought about doing this in the drill press, but I thought it was a lot safer to have the rotation of the drill right at my fingertip, literally. And this worked pretty well on the other ones. I also found out that it's not a great idea to push down on these because they're so thin down here. I'm afraid I'll crack them, because I did that on the first one. It was flexing a lot, so I stopped. So let's see how it goes. There you have it. Now I'll just take a little bit of sandpaper and I'll clean up the edge of the hole so that it's a little softer. So far these spirals are looking great, but if you're wondering what holds them up, stay tuned and next time we'll build a base. If you copy anything I do on the show, I only ask that you be safe. Wear safety glasses at all times, and hearing protection when appropriate. And if you don't know how to use one of your tools, look it up. We have YouTube now.